Well, what's up, guys? Ben here bringing you another video today. I want to talk a little about the situation around OpTic Texas. There's been a few updates in the last couple of days and some unresolved questions around the team. I want to give you guys an update, dive in, and let's discuss. So I think first things first, we got to talk about the coaching situation around this team. After much rumor over the summer on was center going to stay or go, he has parted ways with OpTic Texas. Obviously, you see this nice thank you notice here from the team a couple of days ago. And Troy did put out a video in the last couple of days, kind of talking about his departure, kind of reading between the lines on what he said. He said, like, you know, it just came down to business, which to me, it usually means around compensation. I think the rumblings I had heard, you know, out of this camp from people around the team was obviously he was a head coach of the team when they were on Huntsman. They merged with the Dallas Empire and then Rambo became the head coach. So I think the responsibility swap there. I think Troy's good enough to be a head coach. And I wonder if he wanted that type of compensation to stay or if he just wanted then, you know, if they couldn't match, just leave and go to another team where he would get that level of responsibility. And it seems like that is currently what's going to happen with Troy. From what I've heard about the center situation, it seems like he's heading off to join New York Subliners, which is a bit of an interesting situation. They already have existing coach on the team, D-Real, but I think after last year, I think there's, again, still some instability in that camp on a lot of different levels, especially with the coaching staff. So I think it's definitely an opportunity for center to probably get that head coaching spot. I don't know when they inevitably announce him join the team, if him or D-Real will be considered the head coach, or they both might be considered coaches. But I think Troy has the ability to really be the head honcho in that room and kind of pair well with D-Real. So I'm curious to see what happens on Troy's end, but this does kind of leave a large question around OpTic. I think if we want to talk about potential options to replace Troy, because keep in mind, as much as I think Rambo is a great coach, I think now you've seen with sort of the very successful teams in the league, teams like LA Thieves, teams like Atlanta FaZe, as much as you have a really good, strong head coach, there's only so much you can do, only so many hours in the day to prepare and analyze your team. You need someone else to handle the data analytics side, really help you with reviewing VOD, help you with other functions around the team. So I think finding someone to pair with Rambo is going to be key. A name that's been linked a lot to this team is JP. Obviously, JP, well-renowned prior to CDL, kind of being the stats guy over at MLG on the broadcast side. He then hopped over and was part of the New York Subliners organization for 3 years. He's now a free agent and kind of looking for a squad. And he's been connected to a number of teams. I think OpTic's definitely a good fit for him on a number of different levels. I think he would pair well with Ray in sort of different styles of thinking, but also I think chemistry between the two. I think for the OpTic organization, he could also be of use in other esports as well. Now that obviously the NV OpTic merge is kind of pretty much done and everybody's kind of really playing under that OpTic name now. I think there are definitely a couple other teams that may be in the mix for JP. Two names that come to mind, LA Gorillas. They've obviously announced Marky B joining their organization. They're still looking for another pair on the coaching staff, having cleaned house in the offseason. I could definitely see LAG going for JP again. Just like OpTic, he does have a potential path with LAG and their organization, the guard, in terms of what they can do with other esports. And obviously, I think they could probably give him any number of sort of salary or compensation paths and maybe exceed OpTic in that path. I think another potential option for JP is probably also Toronto Ultra. Again, with Mark heading over from LAG, there's definitely now sort of a wide open spot on this team for some kind of coach. And I don't know if JP wants to or is targeting to be a head coach, but say if Mayhem steps up into that role or you maybe Flex leaves, there's definitely a potential option there. And again, Toronto's an organization, I think that will definitely offer sort of much on the compensation front. Obviously, I think for JP to have to move to Toronto, and that's a whole another thing. But right now, I think those three, and I would say probably of the two, OpTic and LAG are probably front runners in that regard. So we'll see what happens going forward. But that'll be the best fit for me on the OpTic front. I think if you can't get JP, then there are a couple other really good analysts that are out there on Twitter, on Reddit. I think OpTic as well, if they don't want to kind of really fully commit to an analyst, I think there are probably people in their community as well that if trusted could help them with data collection and building reporting. And that way they have something for Ray to build off on and get a lot of that manual labor sort of off his hands if he's been doing it at all to help them with sort of analyzing the path and trends around their team. I think the next thing to talk about with OpTic Texas is a substitute spot. So I think step back for a second. For me, I think there's still sort of some unresolved questions on the starting lineup on this team. Obviously, you know, everybody's aware of what happened in the offseason, right? iLLeY and Dashy were on the roster, then they were off the roster, and then they were back on the roster. And I think my kind of thinking and what I've heard around this team is I don't think there's a super long leash this season. If say they start the season and it's a little bit slow, I think they're running this roster back because they think they have potential. But if it struggles and it's a lot of the same issues they had at the end of last season, I think they make changes fairly quickly around this squad before any potential top prospects are swapped by other teams. Keep in mind, by the way, this year we're starting super early, so I wouldn't be surprised again if people struggle after the first event that there are changes during sort of the Christmas holiday, sort of New Year's break before Major 2. So okay, what is OpTic Texas going to do? Obviously, Jordan General and Prolute are no longer with the team, and in fact, Prolute is now rumored to have joined the Vegas Legion, so he's now kind of locked in, at least for now, a starting spot in the CDL. And I haven't heard much in the way of rumors on General, but I assume he's either locked or in the process of locking in an amateur squad. And you know, I would say this about Jordan General: his teams are always good in the beginning of the season, and do not be surprised if his team is able to qualify for the Pro-Am. Okay, so if you're OpTic Texas, who do you want to pick up? I think you probably go with a 2 substitute player route. Again, I don't think money an issue for OpTic. It's more of what do you want to do for the best for the team. I think you want to pick one player who's a little bit more of a veteran presence and one player that's got more upside as a young player. I think that gives you the best of both worlds. It gives you flexibility on who you want to bring in. Again, assuming, because the season hasn't started yet, I think it's likely if there's any changes on this team, I'd be surprised if Scump or Shotzi were the players that are rotating out of the starting lineup. So you're looking at Inder or you're looking at Dashy, and both of them are AR or flex focused players, but you still want that flexibility with a sub player, again, depending on how the meta is, because we can go to a 3 sub game on some stuff and you're going to look for more of a sub oriented flex player. All right, couple of options out here that immediately come to mind. Taking a look at the top of the list, I see Classic listed there. He's not currently attached to a team. Look, I know Nick is not the highest slaying player in the world, but again, veteran presence. If you're looking for someone to slide in and really be able to like play off of other players and be a gap filler, Nick could be a really good option. My guess is I don't think he's on the top of the OpTic list. I could see him maybe back in the Seattle camp. I could see him in the FaZe camp. But again, intriguing option if you're OpTic Texas to bring in someone who is going to be easy plug and play in terms of a team player aspect. I've seen a lot of people on Reddit saying, oh, what about Gunless? I could see the fit with Pierce. Like, you know, he's definitely a top tier slayer. I think he's a championship winner in his own right. My only thing with Pierce is I have no idea, and I haven't really asked around, to be fair, on what his relationship is like with this camp. If we go step back a couple of years, you know, his tenure on Chicago Huntsman during the Modern Warfare season didn't really end so well, and I don't really know what that relationship is like with that team. If they've repaired that bridge, to me, it's a no-brainer. And Gunless is obviously looking and is lobbied on Twitter to get a substitute spot. But if they're still frosty, I don't really see them kind of entertaining this option. Persini is an interesting potential option for this team. He obviously is another player who had to go around with the Chicago Huntsman early on in the CDL. I think Preston's going to be back to grinding full time. And again, I mean, high ceiling when he plays well, man, like he's very good, can play flex or SMG. A really intriguing sort of more veteran mindset option for OpTic if they want to stash a player. I like potentially going this route with Preston, but I can also see him heading off to be a substitute for LAG and joining his brother on that roster. This is kind of an odd one for me. OpTic Saints would be a very interesting path. There's a lot of running with Nato and the OpTic camp over the years that Saints has been playing Call of Duty. He obviously stepped aside last season and didn't really compete, but we know that Nato can win chips. We know that he's a top tier slayer. I think teamwork stuff is definitely a soft skill for him, but if you're looking for someone to come in with a veteran presence, it'd probably be a better slayer than some of the players I've listed prior here. I think Saints could definitely check that box. Going down the list, I really like Mohawk as a potential option. I think Money Mo has turned down some offers in the CDL, but I think a substitute offer on OpTic would be too good for him to turn down. I think we're all waiting for him to take a shot with the CDL team. I think he's got the slaying skills, and I think he's got the teamwork and sort of the work ethic mindset. Would be a really interesting high upside pick for OpTic if they want to go down this route. We want to keep it going. Brezi's an interesting option for OpTic. I think someone who's consistently slept on, and I know his tenure on Paris in the first year of CDL was a little bit mixed, but honestly, I think most of those issues have to do with the way that team is run. Topic for another video. He's a very talented player, can slay, run sub or AR. I think definitely can speak English well, so you're good on that front. Obviously, I'm not sure what his visa status is, but OpTic, I'm sure you can sort that. Again, another intriguing sort of high upside option, a little bit outside the box, not a, you know, American player, but I like what Brezi could potentially bring this roster long-term. He's really nasty, and I want to see him get a chance in the CDL again. Two more intriguing options for me if we take a look at this team. Obviously, you see Fellow here listed on the free agent list. Has had a couple of run-ins with teams in the substitute spot recently with Dallas Empire. Like Classic, look, he's not going to be your top tier Slayer, but he's going to be able to slot in and play correct Call of Duty off the bat. Again, if they need him in a spot situation, you know, assuming you go with that 2 substitute spot, 1 upside, 1 veteran presence, Fellow is not a bad potential option there. Isn't going to be super popular with the fans, but is safe. And I think the last player we got to talk about is Matty, aka Scraps. Obviously, he sat out last season. He's coming back this year, playing now with the scuff. Like Matty's been playing with a default controller. He's basically been playing with one hand tied behind his back. So I'm excited to see what he can do potentially with the right tools in hand. I think Matty is someone that's going to give you a lot from a teamwork perspective. I think he's a top tier Slayer in his own right, is a very intriguing option for OpTic that can run both the sub and an AR. I don't know what his relationship is like with the OpTic camp, but you know, it's a potential option. Although I have heard that London have secured his services, so if he's not already grabbed, this one might be a little bit out of reach for OpTic. And yeah, I mean, that's the list right now. I mean, there are a lot of other players I didn't list that are really good on this list, and you can take a look on this doc. We'll have it linked in the description of the video. You know, I could also see OpTic maybe picking up 1 sub and sort of waiting. The danger in that though is, look like we're going to see a lot of amateur teams at this first major. Is a pro-am format, and a lot of teams may be in for services on some of these players. And I know OpTic has prestige and it's easy for them to jump some of those teams, but if they're not offering a starting spot like some of these other squads, they may have a difficulties getting the players they want. Again, because it's OpTic, it might not be an issue if you think about it. So I'm very curious to see what OpTic does with their sub situation. We'll see if we get a resolution here the next few weeks on that front. I think the final thing for me is just we haven't yet gotten much on Inder's side of the whole situation over the summer. He's been really quiet. I know he's been going through some personal stuff. He tweeted on September 22nd that his grandpa passed away, so I'm sure he's been dealing with that. But he hasn't really tweeted or streamed at all since the end of the season. And you know, I think, look, he doesn't need to give his side of the story, to be candid. I think that perspective would be interesting to understand sort of what that relationship is like. And you know, he's been through a lot of stuff in the last year, obviously with the hand injury, and it sort of derailed their season a bit last year. But I think getting sort of that POV would be interesting and sort of putting a final bow on what happened over the summer. But I can also see us never really getting that story till a couple years down the road. So just kind of food for thought at the end of this video, if we'll get kind of that that last piece of the puzzle, so to speak. Finally, one last thing, because I realized I didn't mention this through the video. Going back to the coach thing real quick, I didn't mention Parasite. I could see Chris as a potential option as a second coach on this team, especially to help with S&D. The only thing is, I don't really know, again, what his relationship is like with the OpTic camp. You know, Chris has had some difficulties on that front over the years as a competitor. If it's a little frosty, again, I could see that not being a thing, but Chris would bring some interesting perspective to this team. So we'll see if they maybe look down that route, if they can't go out or get JP. So yeah, let me know what you guys think on the coach and substitute front. Are there other names you would like to see OpTic bring on? Let's take a look at your comments, and I may respond to a few in there. As always, if you like the comment, smash the like button, subscribe. We'll keep pumping out content. Season is starting soon, so I'm super excited. And I think we're gonna get a few more announcements between now and then, especially with New York starting to do their rollout. And as always, guys, we'll see you on the next one.